Yeah, it does.
unmuted and everything.
Let's see. Well, what the hell?
No one's got
Greg,
this
you
on.
know, don't you?
Oh.
Alicia, can you hear us? Are we online? What'd she say?
He said just a
We
second.
need an amplifier for her.
Hearing
She
aid
can hear
for
me,
her.
but I can't hear her.
What'd you say?
What? Are we on? Okay, it's broadcasting? Okay, great. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Monday, September 9th, 2019. This is a work session of the Larimer County Board of Commissioners regarding performance measures for public records and information and internal services. Wow, that's a mouthful. I'm Tom Donnelly. I'm the chairman of the Board of Commissioners this year. I'm joined by John Cafalos, Commissioner from District 1, Steve Johnson, Commissioner from District 2. We have a number of folks, I think, who are going to present different aspects of this, of these performance measures. And so, Matthew, do you have a little introduction you'd like to give us? Very good. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, this is Matthew Bohannon from the Budget Office. We've done this many times before. This is our second year of taking the performance measures out of the budget book and bringing them to the website and this dashboard with visualizations. So we'll turn it over to the assessor first, and we'll go through a lot of different departments today.
Hi, Lisa.
No.
Why don't you introduce yourself?
Lisa Teamy, Assessor's Office, and with me is Danielle Simpson, our new Chief Deputy Assessor.
Oh, hi, Danielle.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
I'm gonna let her present as well.
Outstanding.
So give me a little grace. I'm on day 4.
Oh, well, we will because we want you to come back for day 5. Yeah.
So on the left, you have the state audit findings for residential assessment. The line on the top that says compliance, the guidelines are statewide for all assessors' offices, and our compliance has to be below 15.99. And so what they determined was that we were at 7.1, which is pretty consistent with prior years and well within compliance levels. So that has to do with the uniformity of our assessments in comparison to the sales that occurred. And then on the right-hand side is the number of properties per appraiser on our staff. My understanding is our staff has not increased. In fact, our staff has decreased during the last recession, and we have not regained any positions since then. So, and as the county has continued to expand, you can see that the number of properties per appraiser has continued to increase. So our appraisers are trying to do as much as they possibly can with an increasing workload.
So the years at the bottom, are those the year that the audit's done by the state? So 2019 would be the 2018 reappraisal year?
2019 is the 2019 reappraisal. We are audited every year, including on the intervening year. And one of the reasons for the audit on the intervening year is to make sure that there isn't an assessment office that sends the information to the auditor and then turns around and changes all the numbers. So we have to prove compliance every single year.
So the valuations that we just went through this year, is that the 2020
No, they are 2019.
payable in 2020?
Payable
This
in
this always
2020, that's
confuses
correct.
me.
Yes.
So they have already audited you for the 2019
Yes.
assessments?
Yes, this is the preliminary findings. We get the final findings later on this year. And basically, the preliminary ones let us know if there's anything that there's a compliance issue for, and we have the opportunity to correct or discuss with them what the issues are, but there were no compliance issues on our preliminary report. So yes, these are the values for 2019 that we expect to become part of the tax bills for 2020.
Do they do an audit for commercial
Yes.
as well?
Yes.
And I recall in the past, Lisa, you may know, when Steve presented these figures to us, I can't remember the number that he used. Was it, he said it had to be within, I think he said 99.5. 100% was matching. Is that, and he said he wanted to be 0.2 above or below, and the state would let you go 0.5 above or below. Do you know what I'm talking about? Because I don't.
I can speak to that.
Normal. Okay.
We're talking about the median sales ratio. So
Okay.
the sales ratios are the relationship between what properties actually sold for and what we assessed them for after time was considered. So if there's appreciation in the market or depreciation. And so they measure all of those. And overall, we have to be above 0.9, so above 95% of what they sold for, or below 105% of what they sold for. The target is between 0.98 and 1 even. And so anytime that any of the larger districts are between 0.98 and 102, the auditor is usually very happy.
Okay.
And they consider that reasonable.
So how does that audit analysis relate to this analysis?
This is one more piece of that puzzle. So our overall compliance for residential was well within that 0.95 to 105. And the second measure they're looking for is called the coefficient of dispersion, which is up at the title at the top. And that's looking for uniformity, and that's the one that has to be below 0.1599.
So I never took statistics, but
So-
I'm thinking coefficient of dispersion means how far off of the accepted value these things are.
Right, so if you had a chart and it had the line that tracked the trend, and you had a dot for every single sales transaction that happened, they want to know that those dots are well gathered around the line,
Okay.
and that they're not in Timbuktu, and this just happens to be the middle. So this is saying that we're very well gathered around those lines, so it's very, our sales are reflective of the values that we predicted for both the solds and unsolds.
So the one that looks at the actual sale values, we have that for 2019's reappraisal already, or does it take a certain number of time for sales to happen that looks back to 2019?
Our sales are through June 30th of last year.
Yeah, I know, but I think you said, what I understood you to say was that residential sales analysis looks at what you have it valued at and when the property actually sells. So does that look backward into your time? Okay, it doesn't look forward and see if
No.
they actually sold for that value. Okay. So this is very good news, I
Yes.
think, for your office, that your appraisal process appears to me to be just as good as it has been in the past, if I'm
Correct.
reading this correctly. Is that
I
what
tell
get?
people is that it was reasonably reliable. It's really what it's looking for, were our assessments within the realm of reason.
Okay.
And I'm wondering, I appreciate the discussion about coefficients and statistical analysis and uniformity. I'm wondering how you would explain that this is good news to the average property taxpayer.
So the way somebody explained it to me once upon a time was that it means that about 95% of the time we're within about 5% of what properties are selling for. So as far as whether things are going up or going down, well, our goal isn't necessarily whether things are going up or down. It's just trying to track what is actually happening and trying to get it pretty close to what they sold for. So what it is that we're interpreting the market correctly and accurately.
I think what the rub comes in is people don't like that their valuation went up so much because they understand that is going to mean their taxes are likely to go up as well. I looked at my property, which went up 56%, and I looked at the comparable sales. I was shocked by that, but I looked at the comparable sales in my neighborhood even, and I was shocked by what some of those properties sold for. So I think the assessor's job is to figure out what the market is, not whether the people like the market or not. I don't have any control over the market, what other people pay for houses, but it affects me. So I decided not to even protest my value because as much of an increase as it was realistic to what the market was. And
But
these guys you don't have any control over the market. Statutorily, you have to match the market even, whether you like it or not.
And a lot of times we'll get appeals based off of people's struggle to be able to anticipate that and to pay, especially when you have property owners who have owned their homes for a very long period of time. This is a shocker
Yeah,
to them.
yeah.
And they're not necessarily interested in selling their house. Maybe it's the house that they raised their
Right.
children in. And so all they want to be able to do is be able to pay their tax bill in many circumstances with a limited or a fixed budget. And so when our appreciation skyrockets, because there's a lot of demand, it is a hardship for them.
Well, and if I may, just as a very quick example that hits home, no pun intended, in our neighborhood, in the Martinez Park neighborhood, the house to the west of us, which is comparable in terms of square footage and cinder block construction, 1950 subdivision, that house was put on the market, I think it was for something like $438,000, and it was on the market for one day, and somebody offered the homeowners' friends $441 in cash, and somehow I have a feeling when you're evaluating our property valuations and comparable sales, down the road, that's probably going to factor into the value of our home. And even there, in this, we actually did appeal at this time because we went from, $385 to $428. Or $365 to $428. It was like an 18% increase. Anyhow, I think that's the market forces and those are significant cost drivers to people's appreciation.
So is
There's
it,
a lot of competition.
is this data after all the appeals were done as well? They haven't had time to look at those, how the protests might have changed those numbers, have they?
No, these would have been before the appeals.
Okay.
Because the information is due to the auditor usually end of August, or end of April, beginning of May, and so it's before all the appeals hit. So if there are changes in it, we'll see that on the next year's numbers. So if you take a look at 2017, we were at 7.5, but then in 2018, we went to a 7, and that would be after all the appeals were done in 2017, which, if I remember right, is around 19,000. So you can see the effect. Those numbers all change, and that's one of the reasons why they do redo the audit every year, is because the numbers will move a little bit, because
I wondered
decisions are
that.
made to appeals and county board of equalization, and then we also have the state level appeals as well.
Okay, good.
So what we're really talking about here, I mean, this is interesting, I think, but if we're really talking about performance measures for the department, so what would we infer from, based on the number of properties per appraiser? Do we need to take action? Do we not need to take action? I don't know how we use that data really as a budgetary tool in any way, or really even to measure performance. What do you think?
I think it's one of those things where on day 4.
Yeah, I understand. No, I understand. I understand.
But what it's mainly saying is that our appraisers are handling a much larger load than what they historically have, and that at some point,
But our audit results are still
right? So they're
the same.
fighting. They're still fighting the fights, and
Okay.
so we're still keeping our compliance. We're still meeting our statutory obligations, despite the increasing
But
load
it
on
felt
our
like there
appraisers.
was a lot more. It seemed like both the assessor's office and the board of equalization this year settled with a much higher number of property owners than they had in the past, and so that would seem to indicate that there might have been an issue.
Some of that also comes down to also, as those numbers continue to increase per appraiser, that also shortens the amount of time that an appraiser has to look at a property. And so they have to make a lot of split decisions, because even though things appreciate, or even though we have a low volume of appeals or a high volume of appeals, the deadlines are still the exact same.
Yes.
So it's just cramming even more appeals to work in a day. I mean, they can go from working, 40 appeals a day to 75 appeals a day, and that's what they may have to do in order to be able to make it all work. So I think that sometimes maybe they would have made a slightly different decision if they had more time to really consider all the information, but with the amount of information they had and the time they had, they were going through and pulling the trigger. Bob did also contract with a gentleman named Russ Timian of Timian Associates to do an independent study of the modeling results and make recommendations as well. And so we will take a look at those and basically take heed of anything that he recommends. Russ is actually, his company is owned with him and his father, Garth Timian, and Garth actually used to be the state auditor. And so their company does assessments all over the world. And so he is very well established in the assessment community and very familiar. They're actually based out of La Junta, and so very familiar with what Colorado's information is and requirements. So,
Okay.
So we will take a look to see what we can do better.
Another question?
Yeah.
John, go ahead.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Lisa. How many appraisers did we have on board prior to when we, to the current number? I mean, where were we with the number of appraisers, and where are we now with the number of appraisers?
I think we might have been as high as 21, we're now 18,
21 teams.
That was 21 was probably years ago,
due
right?
to some retirements and that sort of thing, yeah. So we have 3 relatively new folks as well, which can also be, it's a little bit of a load on the people training them as well. I mean, it's more help, but you have to get them up to a level of being able to do the job.
I won't pretend to be able to speak to the history of the department, but I think that the number of employees has been fairly consistent. I think where we've seen the change is that we've had a lot more properties. I mean, there's a lot more parcels now than there were
Right.
10 years ago, obviously.
And there's just more development going on,
Right.
which obviously is going to
Right.
make the larger parcel counts.
Yeah.
How do these numbers, I think you worked in other assessor's offices, is that right?
Yes, I'm from Boulder County.
Boulder, that's right. I couldn't remember where. But how do these numbers compare to other counties? Do you know, have a feel for any other county ratios? I mean, at large counties, obviously a smaller office would be different, but how does this relate to Boulder, do you know?
It's pretty close to Boulder. I was
Pretty
the
close?
modeler for Boulder.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so I did the 2019 reappraisal.
Okay.
And so an overall around between 7 and 8 is pretty typical for a metro county that
Okay.
has a large number of sales. The rural counties obviously have numbers that are much closer to the compliance line because they're
Yeah.
dealing with much smaller data sets, which are a lot trickier. And in many cases, there actually are counties that can't even make compliance because they don't have enough sales transactions to even meet the minimum requirement. So the state has to come in and help them with their assessments just to make sure they meet all the guidelines.
And the properties per appraiser, do you know how that relates to some of the other large counties?
I can tell you that Boulders is less than 6,000 per appraiser.
Okay. So we're about 30% more caseload higher than Boulder County's caseload. Okay. Thank you. I thought you might know.
Yeah, and I know that one. I have some emails out to Larimer, or to Weld and to Adams to try to pull that information as well from what they have, but I do happen to know what Boulder's numbers are.
Yeah, I know we have the 10-county budget conference coming up in a couple of weeks here at the end of September, and that's the kind of, I don't know if you've seen the data book that they put out or had any experience with that, but that's kind of some of the comparison tables they'll have in there.
I know that Weld recently, in the last 2 years, I believe, added additional appraiser staff as part of their increase. I mean, everybody's seeing the increase in property, in parcels, so, but I don't know exactly how many or what information they use to make that case.
Okay, thank you.
And any other questions?
I think we're good. Ready to go on?
Okay.
All right, thank you,
Thank
gentlemen.
you.
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to go to county clerk.
Yeah.
Here comes Pam.
Yep. Motor V.
Anybody else? Just you?
Just me.
Okay. All right.
Excuse me, I'm fighting a cold as well.
Why don't you introduce yourself for people who might be listening in?
Sure, this is Pam Nielsen, Larimer County Clerk and Recorder Vehicle Licensing Manager. So I'm here on behalf of the Clerk and Recorder's Office. Our statistics, we're talking about our lobby management wait time for non-renewal and renewal minutes. And you can see that our wait times have escalated based on what our average was at 20 minutes or less than 20 minutes prior to our conversion in 2018. That put quite a hurdle on our staff, learning the new process and different avenues that we've had to deal with there. So of course that's increased. We're working at trying to get that improved as the system stabilizes. So hopefully you'll see that going down. Our numbers are actually from last year because we are having some problems with our conversion. This year, we're still working on getting valid statistics from that system, and that has not been doable because of all the other program requests that are out there trying to get the system up to par. So you're looking at last year's, but we do know that our transactions have been increasing. We can tell that by the numbers of transactions that we see in the paperwork coming through. So we apologize about not having more current information on that. So
Okay. So do you think software system is, I mean, it's been in place about a year now?
it has been, yes.
And so the staff has increased level of comfort and
Yes.
the
and-
bugs have been worked out of it and everything else?
And it's interesting how our staff has adapted to it.
Mhm.
People our old system was very hard to manipulate, and our staff is really, from the front end of it, it's really been very productive for our staff. And then we have a lot more online activities available through this new system that we're excited to see improving. So we've got some bugs there we're still working out, but it's getting better.
So then would your guess be that when you're able to kind of look at this data for the next year or something?
Yes.
That we'll see those numbers go back down?
Yes, we're hoping so.
Okay.
Our goals are in Larimer County to get that down, yeah.
That's not a statewide, that's a departmental goal to have that 30-minute wait time. There's no state guidance on as far as how fast you should.
No, we've set our own internal guidelines. We've tried to meet a 20-minute average wait time.
And do you know about any of our neighboring counties, how they're doing? Because it was a few years ago, we were hearing, like when we were down in like the 20-minute, we were hearing that Weld County was like an hour-long wait.
Oh, yes.
Is that still the case, or do you know?
It's improving there
They're
as
getting
well.
better as well?
Yes, we
Okay.
actually, I'm on a committee that we review those statistics, and last month, they finally got some state statistics that are kind of comparing wait times now. And it seems like all over the state, it's starting to decrease.
Okay.
So we'll see some improvements there.
Yeah, John, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Pam. I'm wondering, do you have data that shows what percentage of the people renewing their licenses or their tags use the kiosks, and what percentage are doing online renewal?
We actually do have those numbers, and of course, I don't have them with me today, but we see those online transactions are increasing. Our mail-ins are dropping down, so it's just kind of a balance of how those transactions are being handled.
So
The
instead
kiosks-
of mailing in, they're doing online
Right.
now.
Yeah.
So it may be not be a larger percentage, but it's people are transitioning from mail to online.
Correct.
Oh,
We
okay.
still see the same effect of the walk-ins. That really hasn't changed a lot. It's just that they're using different technology to get their applications done.
What about the kiosks? The ones isn't there one at King Soopers and then there's one in the lobby? Are they being used?
We actually just moved the lobby one out to the Loveland location. So we have one out in the King Soopers in Loveland, so now those residents also have that ability to use that kiosk. That number is increasing because it's in a location where they can see it when they walk in the store.
But
And then we relocated the one in North College and put that more in a central location. We're seeing an increase in numbers there also because it's more available for the public.
But I mean, off the top of your head, are we saying maybe 10% of the people renew online or perhaps using these
Oh gosh,
kiosks?
we were more like 30% online.
Okay,
Yeah, we're more 35% online.
cool. Thank you.
You're
Good work.
welcome.
Yes.
Okay,
You have some more stuff, or you just doing Motor V?
that's all we have from
On the
clerk. yeah.
dashboard.
Okay.
Angela did want me to share with you, though, that we are working on the legacy system and recording. So we're trying to convert all those documents still, and you probably are aware of that from the budget process that we go through. And then, of course, elections is gearing up for the quadruple election process this next year. So she just wanted me to share that information with you as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay,
Okay?
great. Well, thanks. Good to see you again. Yeah.
You too. Thanks.
Oh, boy, here we go.
Okay, next we have the Office of the Treasurer.
What? Where the hell does that mean?
I thought I was going to be at the end. It's like, I thought we were going in
You are
alphabetical
at the end.
order.
This is the end.
Oh, are we at the end?
I think so. Is this the end?
The end of this service category. yeah.
Oh, there's more.
Gotcha.
Oh.
All
Oh,
right.
the fun's gonna keep on going.
The quadruple fund.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. Well, good morning. My name is Bridget Grimm. I'm the new Chief Deputy Treasurer. Good morning.
I know.
I wanted to share with you that Irene was not able to attend today, and Lauren, who was going to present, had a family emergency. So I'm going to talk about these two slides here.
Okay.
I wanted to start out by saying that the treasurer has three primary roles. As you know, we bill and collect taxes, we distribute to underlying authorities, and we invest idle funds. And we also collect in arrears. So the numbers that you're looking at are for 2018 taxes. 2017 taxes collected in 18, which if not paid, then go to tax sale. So so you can see, just from 2007, which you expect to be high, you can see a little bit of a bump there, but we do see a little upward tick in 18, and that seems to be the case in 2019 as well. We still have a couple more months to collect, so it's hard to tell exactly what that's going to look like. But the slide on the right is actually addressing mobile homes, and those numbers are reflecting the courtesy notices that are sent out to mobile homes. I worked in Adams County prior to joining Larimer County, and the mobile home
Big there.
accounts are really by far the toughest ones to collect. We have some different challenges. Owner of record is the biggest one, I think. But anyways, this is, and they're doing it right now, so we don't have a final count. They're doing it this week and last week on those notices that they're putting out, but I do know it's in that 500 to 600 range.
Bridget, since passed the law regarding this
Yes.
issue, is there a way to determine if these courtesy notices are actually making a difference. In other words, informing people that they are delinquent in property taxes, and therefore they are paying them so that we don't have to consider a lien
Yeah.
and ultimately selling the
Yeah,
lien.
actually, what I do love about what the model that Larimer County uses is that it does give mobile home owners, or even those that are living in the mobile homes, kind of another
Reminder.
outreach, right? And we know they work because we see the influx of their orange tags coming in. People are making payments. Adams County does not do that. Adams County has the largest mobile home population, as you know. And I've actually talked with the treasurer there to say this is actually a really great model to follow, because it does reduce the number of mobile homes that go to tax sale. And if you're aware, the redemption period for mobile homes is only 1 year. So they only have 1 year after being delinquent to redeem. Yeah. Or they lose their home, which is why that law got changed, because it gives the treasurer it takes the handcuffs off the treasurer and gives them a little more opportunity
Flexibility.
to work. Yes, flexibility to work with these accounts.
So Matthew, are these the same performance measures we've always had?
Yeah.
That we've had for several years?
Yeah.
They are?
This is what we looked at last year, yeah.
Okay.
The one on the left, there's a difference between a performance measure and a community indicator.
That's
The
more of an
treasurer's
indicator.
office,
Yeah.
doesn't control the number of tax liens that are sold. But it is a good indicator of how the housing market is doing. And,
Sure.
It's good to.
It is a good indicator of what about the
How
house?
the housing market is doing, and relative to,
Economy.
10 years ago, how the economy's looking.
Yeah.
It's whether people
And-
are able to pay their taxes.
Yeah,
I mean,
and economic climate definitely
Right.
impacts that, as you can see.
So it's important. I think it's a good measurement, but I don't know that it's really a performance measure for the treasurer's department. Frankly, I don't know if either one of these really are, quite honestly. But I don't know what they should be.
Well, it seems like you could use the number of taxable parcels per employee, just like the assessor had,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, these are, Irene brought these. So there's that, we can encourage them to report on whatever you'd like to see. So I can have that conversation with her if you'd
Okay.
like, yeah.
I think it makes sense if the assessor's doing that efficiency measure to do the same thing for the treasurer. There's similar operations
Yeah, a
in
workload.
regards to that.
Yeah.
You have a number of parcels for the assessor, and you have the number of tax notices for the treasurer. It would be a similar efficiency measure, I think. Should be easy to calculate, too. Shouldn't be any additional work on office, I would think.
Right, yeah. We have that,
I mean,
that information.
Yeah, you probably have it, Matthew, don't you? Okay.
One complexity of the Larimer County Treasurer's Office is the number of entities to whom you distribute
Right.
taxes. Because we have, we have a lot of different special districts and those kinds of entities that may be disproportionately high compared to other counties. Somehow that might also be worth reporting.
Okay.
We have like over 100 taxing entities.
150 or
Is
something,
it
right?
150? I can
I-
remember.
I
I
think it's
thought I
higher
just
than
looked
that.
at the number. I think it's 274,
Yeah,
but I
think-
don't know
was
why
gonna
that
say,
number's in my head.
I think it's
I've been here for a long
almost
time.
300, yeah.
Yeah.
Too long.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks. Good to see you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
it's
you.
nice to meet you.
Nice to see you, Bridget. Well,
How many more of these we have?
So that is the end of public records and information, and we'll go to support services. So we have
1, 2, 3, 4.
6 more
6.
departments.
Okay. Great. All right.
So we'll invite the county attorney's office up first, and facilities and
come on up.
finance and fleet, and whoever else wants to join us up here.
You want to take them one at a time, or do you guys all want to come up?
Oh, yeah, we'll go through one at a time.
Okay. Bill, introduce yourself.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bill Rasu, Deputy County Attorney. So our measures are based primarily on efficiency in comparison with other like-sized counties. So the first measure is based on the number of attorneys per capita in comparison to some of the other Big Ten counties. And the second measure is our number of attorneys in comparison to the number of county employees. And at the bottom, you see there are some, our most comparable size-wise counties and the number of attorneys in comparison to the number of county employees for each of those counties. This year, there's a slight decrease on the left side, and I guess it would be reflected on the right as well. We did add one new attorney position in 2019, Frank Hogg, who's doing county general work. So we now have about 3 3/4 general county attorneys who do all the county work other than DHS human services work, and then we have about 4 1/4 attorneys that do human services work entirely. So we've tried to improve that ratio a little bit, and we started with that this year. So.
Do all of those counties do the same functions? Do they all do DHS, child welfare cases?
This number excludes human services because some counties contract that out.
Okay.
And some do it
So
in-house.
you've tried to make it apples to apples.
And some do some human services work and don't do others. Weld County, for example, does the child protection cases, but they don't do any of the child support cases. They have a separate full-time contract attorney that does all of their child support enforcement.
And we do all of ours in-house?
We do all of ours in-house.
Okay.
Right.
Is the county attorney's role in litigation also a difference between counties?
It is. Some of the much larger counties, Arapahoe, you see Boulder County, they have very large attorney staffs. They tend to handle most of the litigation in-house. The Weld County Attorney's Office, Douglas County, and some of the others within that range, they tend to handle the day-to-day legal work for the most part. They handle litigation that's directly related to the day-to-day operations, like the land use appeals, things of that nature, election litigation. But when it comes to one-off civil rights litigation and things of that nature, they tend to have contract attorneys. We're shifting towards that. We've reluctantly been moving in that direction the last few years. If we get large civil rights cases that come in, they're extremely time-consuming, and so we do use outside counsel to help on those. We still stay pretty heavily involved, though. We think it's important that we keep tabs on how those cases are going, and so it really is a mixture. But I would say overall, in comparison to other counties of our size, I would expect we tend to handle still a little bit more of the litigation in-house in comparison to our counterparts. The City of Fort Collins Attorney's Office, for example, they farm out virtually all of the litigation except some minor city code enforcement, things of that nature.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Thank you, Bill. I'm curious. How does your office determine who takes the lead on a particular case? Is it based on expertise, or could you speak to that, please?
It is based on expertise. That's the primary factor. Each of us in the office have certain areas and departments that we work with primarily, and we try to become subject matter experts. It can be a little bit difficult because the variety of work is extreme, across every county department. And so when things unusual come up that are highly specialized, like water law, intellectual property law, some of that stuff we do seek outside counsel to help with those. But usually it's just an area of expertise that each attorney is assigned to and tasked with just becoming experts in that particular area.
Thank you.
Okay.
Come up. Next, we have facilities.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ken Cooper, Facilities Director. We have 4 things that we track. The first specifically talks about the operating costs per square foot across all of our county buildings that Facilities manages. And our goal there is to stay under 5% in terms of year-over-year increase. So this gives you a quick snapshot of where we've been That's getting more difficult, as you can imagine, with the, with the overall cost escalation, in particular on construction projects, but this, again, is specific to the operational costs. But things like labor for housekeeping is a real issue. We're seeing some increases on that because it's just harder and harder to get people to, to do that work and to stay in it and to be consistent with staffing and so on. So that's really been a challenge, but we continue to partner with primarily Clean Tech. That's our primary contractor, and they've done a good job for us on that. So if there's any questions on that one,
Questions?
pretty straightforward.
I think the only performance measure we need is how often this table gets cleaned. It's been cleaned, so you did great. Everything's
Okay,
good with that.
Yeah, good. We'll add that one to the measures for next
It was
year.
about 5 years coming, but it's done. Isn't it beautiful, Linda?
Beautiful.
Yeah.
It's very beautiful.
I have a question.
Yeah, John, go ahead.
Ken, thank you. I'm wondering, in line with one of our strategic goal objectives regarding workforce development and people with disabilities, and looking at it internally and externally, are you folks engaged in that conversation to see what we might be able to do internally to hire people who might be able to meet these needs and other needs? That's my question.
It's a great question. We have been involved in those conversations with HR. On the internal side, we don't necessarily require it of our, of our contractors, although we certainly have had conversations with them as well. But we, I'm not sure if I'm getting to the point of the
I think so,
question.
Ken. My hope would be that perhaps we can be more intentional about, working with contractors like Clean Tech and at least, we can't require things of folks, but at least conveying, why this is an important goal and what they might be able to do to adjust their hiring practices, perhaps.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Two things that come to mind. The requirements that we have with CJIS is a requirement. That's the criminal justice component of this thing for being able to have. I know it's not related to handicap or disabled folks, but I'm trying to get to a point. Sorry. But we do have that as a requirement, so that really limits our ability. I'm not suggesting that criminal activity and
Right. But people have to pass a background check to be able to
Exactly,
clean
yes,
in the
yeah.
Justice Center, for instance. Yeah.
Exactly. So the screening process that we put those companies through is much more stringent
Pretty
than
intense.
most of their clients, and so that really puts an added burden on the contract at this point. And so we're, although we certainly would like to and have encouraged, the going out for, with the disability component of that, we have to be a little bit careful to not get to where we're putting such a burden on our contractor that they can't get staff hired. So I don't know if that gets to the point, but
Well, certainly, not to belabor this, but one could make the case. You mentioned that one of the challenges is turnover. Certainly in terms of housekeeping or janitorial services,
Right.
custodial services, and I think there's ample evidence that demonstrates if it's a right, job match, that people can be much more. There's less turnover, and that would save money in the long term.
Yeah, the other piece I was going to get to is on the internal side. We've had a really big challenge trying to get people to pursue these positions, and so that's been a challenge as well. So,
Thank you.
yeah, thanks. Upper right is the survey that we've done roughly every 15 months or so. We're actually due to do another one here in the next couple months, but that's an internal customer survey that we send out. It's got between 15 and 20 questions that we ask, but the primary and the first one is tell us overall what kind of service level we provide. And our goal there is of the respondents, we would ask that, or we would hope that that we get we have 4 categories, and the 2 good ones are basically good and excellent. And so we hope to get at least 90% of our overall response to say that we're doing a good or excellent job. And so we've been right at that number, for the past 2 years. And again, we're ready to, send another one of those out here real soon. So.
What's an example of a metric that you use for this question, or an example of a question, perhaps?
Beyond the overall category, you mean? Or,
I mean, what are you asking people when they say they rank
Yeah.
facilities services as good or excellent as, what does that mean?
Well, yeah, again, it has about 20 questions on the survey. This one specifically is overall service level. So basically, you know, when you think of facilities and overall, what kind of service do we provide day to day to our customers, that's the root of that question. So we have a lot of other more targeted questions about, you know, the office planning component, the construction component, communication, you know, housekeeping specifically. This one is a broad term. How are we doing? You know, that's the question. And tell us, is it poor, fair, good, or excellent? So
it could be a lot of things. It could be the cleanliness of the building,
yeah,
whether they have the right technology tools to do their job. Some people might interpret it that way. Do they like their office space? Is it adequate space? Is it crowding? Could be a lot of things, I would
good.
think,
Yeah,
right?
the technology piece, I haven't seen that to be weighing in so much. Housekeeping is a big deal, right? If they, you know, those track pretty consistently. If people have, you know, dirty bathrooms, and, you know, if they're not getting that service level, if this thing is dirty, you know, you're not going to say we're doing a very good job, right? So that seems to be a pretty tight, you know, correlation between those. But there's a host of them that we ask about. So more, you know, level of professionalism, you know, those kind of things are broader. But again, this question is specifically just overall, tell us how we're doing. So.
And I think the folks in the Loveland campus probably rate their facilities very high right now.
It's all brand
compared-
new.
Yeah.
I would think it would, maybe I would thought it would have gone up because of that, but I don't know, maybe.
Well, we're about to find out. We're gonna send another one out here real soon.
Okay.
So.
Everybody I talk to loves that building, loves working there.
Yeah.
I like
Yeah.
visiting there. I like having meetings there, even.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really pleased with it, and we hear the same thing from customers. We hear it from outside people that come and use the building as well. So, the bottom left is how many staff that we have on the maintenance side of our business that support up to at a 100,000 square foot increment, and so that's basically a staffing index, and we've maintained that real closely. We went up a little bit because we added a position this past year, but it gives you a benchmark there that on the industry side, the benchmark for organizations like us would be at 5, and we are actually at less than 1 FTE per that square feet. The difference there primarily is that we have an awful lot of supplemented support that we get from electricians and, you know, contractors that do kind of onesie-twosie, you know, projects and things like that. Plumbing, you know, there's some organizations think that the best way to do that is to operate, you know, with heavy staffing on those things. We find that we are able to deliver quicker and less expensive services by farming an awful lot of that out. So that really makes up for that difference number. So. And then finally, related to that is the preventive maintenance that we handle. The goal is to get to a 90% or better, basically PMs that are performed within the manufactured recommendation, and we're operating up near 100% on that. So that's done, you know, on a scheduled basis. Of course, you know, some of those are monthly, some of those are quarterly. Basically, it's whatever the manufactured guidelines calls for on equipment, you know, rooftop units, you know, boilers, things like that. Are we getting to those things on a regular basis? And the answer is yes. We're doing a good job with that. So.
Great.
So do you measure when people ask for something to be fixed, how long it takes? Because you guys do really, really well at that.
We
I
do.
thought that might be in that last one, but it sounds like that's more of a published maintenance schedule for a specific item or something.
Mhm.
But do you track, I know IT tracks the
Mhm.
time to close a ticket or whatever they call it, I think. Do you do
Right.
something like that?
We do. Yeah, that
More
follows
of an
the same.
internal thing, because
Correct.
citizens probably aren't reporting that generally, but you guys are really good
Thank you.
at even small things. You know, you respond during the weekend or whatever else, which I don't expect, but that's when I think of things. But,
Yeah,
so I write you all the time. And
You mentioned IT, Commissioner, and it's the same process, the same,
Okay.
you know, we serve, you know, the portal that we track projects through is the very same. So,
Okay.
and we do between 6,000 and 7,000 of those in a year, and so we've
Wow.
got those numbers as well, so, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
That's like 30 every work day.
Mm.
I would never have guessed that.
Yeah.
There was some kind of hum in the,
We have a lot of space.
yeah, there was some kind of hum in the office back there, and they had like,
I thought that was
remember that last week?
That was you.
It wasn't just me. It
was only when you were there.
It was just in my head, maybe. It
was very
We had
annoying,
like 5
too.
guys in there, and they had every ceiling panel taken out. They really rolled in and got it taken care of. I don't even know what the heck it was, but.
Hope it wasn't 5.
Good work, yeah, it was good.
That's the only device I had planned.
Yeah, exactly. Sierra Club infiltrated this. Very good.
Thank you.
Great work.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So next we will have the finance director come up, and
Yes,
anyone
yes,
she wants to
yes.
invite.
Number of awards, one.
Oh, yeah, awards won.
37 consecutive years.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Carol Block, and I am the Finance Director. And we have 4 measures here. Starting on the left-hand side is the measure of our financial statements. As you know, our financial statements are a year's worth of work. We compile all that work, and those are audited by an independent firm of auditors. And this measures whether or not we have received a favorable opinion or a clean opinion. And I know it's a boring chart, and I hope it will always be boring, because this measures the board and the county's commitment to transparency and to stewardship and to accurate reporting. So then the top 2 have to do with our purchasing department. So on the right-hand side is the number of bids, quotes, and RFPs. So in the county, anything that over $50,000 has to go through a formal purchasing process. So this shows how many we do. And the chart doesn't really have enough years to show the true trend, but the trend we're seeing is that departments are doing a lot more RFPs and a lot fewer quotes and bids. And I think that sort of indicates the complexity, the increasing complexity of the types of transactions that we're involved in. And also, I think it measures a little bit the department's desire to not just take the lowest price. They want to look at an RFP, and they want to look at the vendor fit and what sort of unique things that the vendor brings to the table before they actually select the right vendor. And then the one next to it with purchasing is the estimated savings through the purchasing office. And this is kind of measuring the value of having a purchasing department. So basically, this measure takes the bid or RFP that we accepted, the dollar value of that, compared to the highest one that we could have taken had we not gone out and done this process. So it's not a perfect measure, but I think it does show you and the citizens that there is value towards having this purchasing process, that it adds value in terms of cost savings. And then the one at the bottom is workers' comp savings. And this is actually my favorite measure because it measures us against an industry benchmark. So if you look at the 0 line, that is the average cost of workers' comp. And so anything that's above it says we're spending less, and anything below is when we're spending more. So in our most current year, 2019, we're spending 34% less for workers' comp coverage and claims than the national average. So I think that speaks a lot to the quality of our risk management staff and to departments' interest in keeping their employees safe.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So that's what I have.
So what are the units on the benchmark? Is it dollars per employee, or how is that benchmark?
Yeah, why don't you?
How's that benchmark calculated?
I warned my staff that if you asked any difficult, detailed questions, they would have to come forward.
Okay.
Jeff, introduce yourself.
Hi, Jeff Green, Risk Manager for the county. To explain that benchmark, the industry standard is the experience modification rating that is calculated by the National Council on Compensation Insurance, the NCCI. And as Carol said, the 0 means your average with what your expected losses would be with your peer group of organizations nationwide. That number is normalized via payroll, because not all entities have the same level of employment. So that benchmark is our performance against the expected losses our organization would have based on those national averages on that benchmark rating.
And every,
Dollar value,
And it's
right?
dollar
It's
value.
not number of claims.
and every,
dollar value.
every occupational group has a different experience rating, as I recall from
It's by
running our
job
business.
classifications.
So in 2010, we experienced more loss
Than average.
Than the average. Our losses were
mix
high.
of our occupations.
Were higher.
But every
And-
other year, we were better.
Yeah, and this benchmark actually looks 4 years in arrears to calculate.
A
It does-
rolling
It's a
average.
rolling average
Okay.
cost.
So something is wrong with the title of the graph.
That
because
is something we really struggle with.
I'm struggling with it too, because,
To explain an insurance
yeah.
terminology in easily understandable layman
So
terms.
our savings as a percent of the industry benchmark indicates to me that even our best year, we only saved 41% of what the industry benchmark saved. See what I mean?
Well, it would actually,
That's what the title says. It's a percentage of the industry benchmark. How did we do compared to the industry benchmark? Do you know, does any?
Yeah. Yeah, what makes this one challenging is with the county being self-insured, there's no direct dollar correlation to it other than we're paying out less money on our claims. If we were to purchase an insurance policy, that percentage savings would be a premium credit right off the top of what the county would be charged.
It's more like our experience compared to an industry benchmark.
Yeah, it's our savings as a percentage above an industry benchmark. Not of an industry benchmark, right?
Above?
Savings.
Oh, that might be better, actually.
Below? Is it below?
It was one year
Played
below.
with this for
Yeah,
a
it's one
long
of those.
Yeah,
time.
we're-
We go round and round on it.
Yeah, we're actually plotting the inverse of the number is what we're doing, because how the industry sets.
There'd be no math.
Yeah,
but-
it's actually, this is giving much clearer, thanks,
Yeah, it's
Steve.
clear as mud, right, Steve? Yeah, the ratings come out as a 1.0 is an average rating with your peer group organizations with similar makeup of types of jobs. If your rating is below that number, you are doing better. If your rating is above that number, you're doing worse. Well, the county's experience rating as presented by the NCCI for 2019, and it's indicative of all years, we're at a 0.66. So we are 34% better than the average. It just, that chart, graphing it that way makes it look really weird because it makes like we're doing
Yeah.
worse than average.
Yeah,
So we're
especially
plotting.
If you're going better, you're going down.
Correct. So we're plotting the inverse and trying to explain that.
But when I looked at the chart from that title, it didn't tell me what your explanation was.
What
And
if
I
it
don't
was-
have a better suggestion, but there has to be one.
What if it was just workers' comp savings compared to the industry benchmark? Would that
I like
speak?
that. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense, because there was one year where we didn't save as much as the industry benchmark, and every other year, we saved more than the industry benchmark. That tells me more as a non-statistical person.
Okay.
Okay, we'll
I
try
mean-
that.
We'll get that
Okay,
updated.
I mean,
Try that.
you guys are the experts, you might, so if that makes more sense to you, that makes more sense to me, if it's correct.
Would it be helpful if we put in loss experience, because this is directly related to the losses? Just, throwing ideas out.
It looks like our losses are going up, our loss experience. No.
Hence our challenge in trying to present this
Nobody
number.
knows what loss experience is, except for you guys.
Presented as a graph now.
Yes.
Would that help? Because it used to be a number on a chart, and that was really hard to understand.
Oh,
So
okay.
at least the graph lets us use red and green.
It's green, so we're doing good.
Thank you.
I got that point.
Thank you, Jeff. I just to add to the complexity of figuring out the proper title, I know savings implies dollar savings, but I wonder if there wouldn't be any value in saying workers' comp, dollar savings as compared to, in other words, we're saving 34% in terms of money.
Yeah.
And I don't know who the audience is for this, but if it's on the website and it's meant to be for the general public to understand it, I think it's important to make it clear that we're saving money.
maybe put
Just
in
something to
words,
think about.
compensation cost savings or something
Something.
like
And,
that.
Yeah.
and then if I may, I'm curious, 34%, let's see if I get this right, compared to the industry benchmark, which is a good thing, we're spending less, right, on claims and coverage. What are some examples of best practices that we're implementing to get us in the green most of the time?
Well, we have some very complicated and aggressive type of safety programs that we do. We work very closely with natural resources and the whole community planning and infrastructure group. We have a safety committee there that Risk chairs, and we do annual trainings when they're getting ready to ramp up for their seasons. We do everything from safe lifting, biomechanics, driver safety training, chainsaw safety trainings. We do all of those on an annualized basis. In fact, this morning, my department was doing a defensive driving training for the assessor's office for all of their staff. And so we kind of look at departments' losses, where they've been, what things we need to train on based on the claim trends. And then if we don't have those claim trends in a department like the assessor's office, we look at what are their biggest exposures that could cause a catastrophic loss to an employee, and then, cost the county a lot of money. And the folks being out on the road is definitely their largest exposure. So we look at our losses to tell us where we need to do our safety training.
I think another thing we do that I'm not sure all counties do is we allocate workers' comp costs to the departments based on the type of employee they have and also their loss experience. So that kind of incentivizes departments to look at the safety of their employees a little bit more than if, the general fund just paid for all of the costs.
And that also gives them the opportunity to influence their results. If they dedicate some time towards the safety training, they can see a positive effect in their budget in future years as their losses come down.
So Jeff, are you aware that I got to sit in the cab of a road grader for the first time in my life the other day, but I was wearing a helmet and also a safety vest.
That is very good. And your seatbelt, I would hope, because we've turned some of those over from time to time.
It wasn't moving, it was just
Oh, you're just sitting there, okay.
It's the caucus in the tank moment for the mailer.
Can we get a
There we
picture
go.
of that?
Yeah.
Can we get a picture?
I was actually thinking about that.
Me too.
Oh, we're always thinking about that, John. Okay, great work.
All right.
Okay, speaking of vehicles, we're going to have fleet now.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Kim Nahab with Fleet Services Director. Some of ours are, we've kind of struggled with performance measures as a sense too for this chart. Some of these are just ending up just being year-to-year stats. But we have the first one up in the top left is vehicles and equipment per mechanic measured in vehicle equipment units. We average about 112 vehicle units per mechanic for all of our locations within the county.
Explain what that is, a vehicle.
Yeah, it's about how many hours you need per repair for the year for a piece of equipment and how many technicians you need to have that ratio be correct. So essentially, if you'd have a patrol car that needs to be touched 1 hour per month, you'd have 12 hours per unit, and you take that times 60 units. So now you come up with a number to see how many available hours you would have with a mechanic. On average for the nation too, you'd average about 1,350 hours of direct work for a mechanic in a situation such as ours. They may have 2,080 hours a year, but direct time they can have on task usually comes out to about 1,350. And that's taking into account sick leave, vacation leave, holidays throughout the year, whatnot. But we look at that calculation of how many hours per of repair per class of equipment. We have a lot of classes of equipment in the county. So like I said before, when you have a patrol car or a sedan that may only need 12 hours of repair a year and maintenance, and you take a dump truck on the same token that could be 4 to 5 times more than that per year. So we can calculate that hours of repair and maintenance out by class code. So for example, on the tandem dump trucks, we have approximately 36 of those, and they're all going to take a certain amount of hours of repair for the year. And then we calculate how many technicians we have, and we try to balance it out so we have the right amount of repair hours per equipment per mechanic. So that's kind of a calculation we use to get to that point. On the same token, there's times throughout the year too, I know that Ken mentioned before, but we have times sometimes retaining people or hiring technicians because it's getting to be less and less of them out in the field. So those can kind of vary our numbers a little bit throughout the year, but we stay fairly consistent on it, on what we want to measure on that. One other thing we have then on the cost per mile of light-duty vehicles, and this comes in at, from 2017 to 18, roughly 28 cents per mile for sedans and that type of thing. And that includes repair, maintenance, and fuel for that vehicle. We don't have any ownership cost in this calculation. This is just strictly for maintenance and fuel in that category. On the lower right, it's cost per hour of heavy-duty vehicles, kind of in the same category. We calculate the hours of cost per hour by units, because we measure heavy equipment by hours and light-duty vehicles by miles. That's how we calculate those. So you can see an increase from 17 to 18 in that sense, too.
Shouldn't it be red then?
It
if
should
it's
be
a-
red. I just saw that, made a note,
Yeah.
yeah.
We don't want the cost per mile to go up, do we?
No.
Want to go down?
No, we're above the goal of 28 cents a mile, so.
On that
The
one,
goal
right.
is that, is that an industry standard, or is that something that you all set?
It's just something we've established, kind of an average for our costing, so we can kind of monitor where we've been and where we're going with it. But there again, like with the, you're right on the green one, tires especially went up a lot last year. Saw a huge increase on tire costing. And we do a lot of tires within the county, from small light-duty vehicle tires to heavy equipment tires and truck tires. So those costs did increase that in that sense, but same on the heavier duty vehicles cost. Another thing with the cost per hour on heavy-duty vehicles, we also include in that cost is we use our outside vendors for repair and maintenance a lot on our heavy equipment as well. So we calculate that into the cost per hour.
Why is that? Because the county has difficulty? Is it because the county has difficulty hiring qualified, diesel mechanics or heavy equipment mechanics?
Well, in that sense, with our heavy equipment, especially like equipment at the landfill, we have a certain lifespan we keep on that equipment, but we do rely heavily on our vendors to support that equipment as well. We can do a lot on the equipment, but it's getting so complex now, we aren't able to update software in those packages and that type of thing. They're getting more complex, and sometimes it's a timing thing. If we can't get to it, we can have Wagner do it, just for example, for landfill equipment. In that sense, too, there's a lot of times we extend warranties on these pieces of equipment. So the extended warranty, we can have the vendor cover that repair for us. That helps us to assist to keep our cost down a little bit as well. But
So is there a Caterpillar shop where you can bring in the dump truck to get serviced, or how?
well, actually, we do have a Wagner store up here. It's over
Wagner
by
store,
Windsor.
yes.
They do have a repair shop. They have field service that we rely on heavily, especially like at the landfill, the compactors, the dozers and stuff. It's something they have to go to them to do a repair on that site. We do have a mobile loop truck that goes out and services all the equipment in the county as well. So in that sense. But yeah, there's a lot of balance that goes on there, even as far as body shop repairs for light-duty vehicles. We get all that done by vendors outside. We don't do any body repair in-house and that type of thing. So there are a lot of different things we do and a lot of things that we don't do, that we rely on the vendors heavily to keep the equipment going and that type of thing.
So Matthew, I'm looking at the fuel consumption chart, and I don't really know whether that's good or bad. And I think that's why we don't have a goal for that, because we're a growing county, making more trips, and that fuel consumption is going to go up. I'm just wondering if that is, well, we're interested in that, obviously. We want to know, why do we have a huge spike in fuel consumption if that ever happens? Do we have a goal of having our fleet get better fuel efficiency, and do all the vehicles, I don't even know, obviously a car would have a fuel miles per gallon rating, but a compactor at the landfill wouldn't, but it uses gas. So I'm wondering if, would a fuel efficiency rating be better, or is that impractical for the kind of fleet vehicles we have? I would think that one of the ways we could reduce our fuel consumption is to get more efficient vehicles. We've all done that. In some cases that might work. In other cases it might might not even be a good idea in a landfill vehicle.
This
to
could
try to
really
do
be an
that.
indicator how many snowstorms we had, right? I mean, how many times we had to plow.
Yeah.
I mean, actually,
Yeah.
you know.
I'm just wondering if this is a good indicator, I guess, or if there's a
And
better
see,
one.
we've struggled with that one as well. Is that good or bad, or
Yeah.
does it matter to
Yeah.
anybody? I mean, in a sense, like last year, we put about 6 million miles on the light-duty vehicles alone, so that mileage did go up on those. However, there again, you're right, more efficient vehicles, but we try to get what the departments want to utilize, such as a patrol car for the sheriff's office, they want an all-wheel drive Charger.
Mm-hmm,
That
yeah.
vehicle, if you just drove it down the highway, probably wouldn't do bad on mileage.
Yeah, but that's not what they do. Yeah.
Pursuit and that type of thing.
They idle a lot.
We want to make sure they have the vehicle to do the job they need. So efficiencies there, they're kind of hard to
Mm-hmm. Right.
calculate into
Right.
and improve on. I mean, not that the technology isn't getting there to be better and better.
Yeah.
And
And I mean,
the
we,
landfill compactor, yeah, that's another whole story that, when you're running 12 to 15 gallons per hour on that unit.
12 to 15 gallons per hour.
Yes.
Gallons of
So
fuel
you're
per
talking a
hour.
lot of fuel consumption there. So, offset with, a shutdown system that may shut down idling on it would help. But there's a lot of factors there too. When you get into heavy equipment, they burn a lot of diesel. And when you have a job to do and doing what they do, you go through a lot of fuel there.
so it
too.
sounds like this is probably the best for that.
As an indicator, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can reduce fuel consumption by stop providing services.
Yeah, we
I
were
mean, you
looking
wouldn't
at
wanna do that. It's
the
just-
natural gas vehicles too, and there's decisions about repairing and the fuel stations.
Right.
I know you're considering.
Well, we do currently utilize the City of Fort Collins as a fuel station right across the street from the Vineyard. So all of our CNG vehicles currently fuel at that site.
I mean, an interesting indicator would be the percentage of the fleet that's on alternative fuels, for example. That might be of interest to some people.
Well,
Looking at him.
Well, and yeah, I think in the interest of being good stewards of taxpayer dollars, I'd want to know what's the dollar amount associated with 678,000 gallons of fuel, and then in terms of all pardon?
I mean, just having the cost on there too, what that fuel.
But I mean, we're spending a couple of $1 million a year for fuel, right? And so I think fuel efficiency is something that is in the interest of everyone, and also in terms of what I think Commissioner Johnson is getting at, looking at, I saw one of the vehicles compressed natural gas, but have we considered where it might be appropriate to look at electric vehicles?
We're actually doing that right now.
Thinking
We're
about
working
it,
with
yeah.
our fleet cab currently on where that may be a option to put some in.
That's interesting, thank you.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's what I was going to say. So we did, several years ago, I don't know how long ago it was, Linda, 4 or 5 years ago, 4, we did come up with this cab. I don't know exactly remember what that stands for.
Customer Advocacy Board.
Yeah, and so we have kind of a board that's supposed to look at the vehicle purchases, ensure that departments are really can use the vehicles they're getting. And then we also tried in the budgeting process, we tried to really fully burden the cost of vehicles so that folks would have to think twice before they just went and bought something. It didn't happen a lot, but we had departments that had 3 or 4 trailers and things like that. They really hardly ever pulled, maybe pulled once a year. And that's something, and put that on the replacement plan is silly, right? And make your guys will fix, grease it or whatever and look at the tires even when it never gets used, seemed wasteful. So we have done some of that stuff. We've implemented some of that stuff to try to make the fleet more efficient. And so that's good. You've done good work.
And I know that one of the issues that's come up when there's been some informal discussion about electric vehicles is that oftentimes employees take the vehicles home, and if they don't have the proper way to charge the battery, that can be an issue. But I'm wondering, is there any consideration for tapping into some of the lawsuit funds as far as getting charging stations?
We're actually looking into some
at
of
the
those
court,
right now,
at the
Joe.
courthouse and at the Loveland camp.
Looking at
You're
some grants
looking
and
at
that
that?
type of thing for charging station. We're working with the City of Fort Collins right now to potentially put one over at the parking garage, because they do have some in the parking garage now. There's that potential.
We
So
have it
we're
at the
looking at
Loveland
different
building.
avenues.
We do have one there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Usually they have a cord in the trunk, right?
Right, that comes with the vehicle.
They usually just haul it around with them.
Right.
The issue for alternative fuels is really the application. So pool vehicles, they really lend themselves to that. We tried compressed natural gas in Road and Bridge, and some of them don't have the power, the configuration, and a pickup truck makes it less usable. So the next alternative fuel on the list is
Looking at electric, correct.
and charging stations. And there are funding at the state to help with that.
Or even hybrid vehicles, obviously. Hybrid vehicles can get good,
Right, we actually have some.
less pollution.
Okay, great.
We'll have Human Resources come up
Thank you.
now.
Bridget, get up here.
Oh, dear.
Hurry up.
Moving it along.
Gosh, Bridget.
Yeah, that's one of our performance measures, how long it takes you to get to the microphone.
Bridget Paris, the HR director.
And leave.
And our first one, overtime as a percentage of total earnings, we saw a slight uptick in overtime for 2018.
Overtime, yeah, percentage of your paycheck.
HR tracks that just very briefly, not that they can control it, but what they do is they look at departments that have a lot of overtime and say, perhaps you need to add an FTE, you're paying a lot at time and a half, you're asking the big burden of your employees, is this a spike or is this a trend? And so they track it for the county, that's what you see here, but they also track it by department.
And is most of it occurring in sheriff's jail and sheriff's office or what?
Yeah, they have
That's
the
where-
largest percentage of employees eligible to earn overtime.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. County manager isn't tracking any? She's not turning in any?
I'm not.
Okay.
I know her, but I'm not.
I'm not either.
good.
I'm not getting paid undertime either, nor overtime. Okay.
It's saving on your workers' comp.
All right.
How do you know?
Keep going. Keep going. Just go.
Average time from job posting
don't wanna be
opening
last
to
up
the
there, you
offer,
think.
we had a decrease in that. We're down to 42 days. Some of that is just working with hiring managers, offering some additional screening and selection tools, continuing to better utilize our applicant tracking system. And I truly believe the market is having a little bit of a push on our hiring managers. If they don't move quickly through this process, they are losing candidates. So some of what we're doing and some of hiring managers being motivated to make those moves. Increase of healthcare costs over prior year. We actually are continuing on our downward trend of healthcare. There are a lot of components that are going into that, as well as we continue to work forward. We did have some large cost claimants pass away.
Yes.
So that was significant. Not as much our doing. You know, in how we're managing the healthcare, we're trying to do as much as we can to reduce those costs, but we had some pretty significant changes over the last couple years. We did see the benefit of continuing to work on a relationship with UC Health. That did help our costs, and we are continuing to pursue additional work with UC Health and with Banner to help continue to lower those costs. Employee survey responses indicating Larimer County is a great place to work is consistent over the last couple years. So those are my exciting numbers.
Yeah, it went down after I got reelected, and it's staying down.
Because I filled out the survey.
People were hoping they would be rid of me, but now I guess there's no hope for them for 2 more years.
2 more years.
Bridget, is there a way to reopen the survey? I'm not sure if I had.
No.
The good news is you'll get another opportunity to
an
respond to the
employee in
survey here in just a
2019.
month.
You're just lucky I didn't fill it out, buddy. You wait.
I think I
It's
did.
possible.
Okay.
I'm wondering if, for the increase of healthcare costs over a prior year, wouldn't a better goal be whatever an index of healthcare inflation is? Because that tends to, I know in some years it was 12%, but in other years it was a lot more than that, and in some years it might be less. Is there a reliable increase, and is there a reliable index for, I've seen it somewhere. It's probably nationwide. It might not be Colorado or Larimer County for sure, but it seems to me healthcare costs are so volatile. Having this, a goal at 9% is like we want housing prices to go up 9% every year. That's not what the market does. You know
Yeah.
what I mean, Matthew?
I know what you mean. There are, even as a component of the CPI, there's a healthcare line in there that we can watch, and depending on the index that you choose or what you pick, it can vary anywhere from 4 to 12, and who you talk to in healthcare.
Mhm.
So we could spend some time trying to find that consistent measure that we could benchmark against.
Maybe it's not a problem right now, but I'm thinking if healthcare
Yeah.
costs went up 30% some year, and we were at 15, you would be red, but you'd be
Probably
better than
more
the market,
reasonable
right?
for us to have it at 8. So Lockton keeps that average change in healthcare costs. So it's essentially a trend line, and it runs typically at about 8%. So we really could reduce that goal of that 9% down to
If
that
it's fairly
benchmark.
stable, we probably don't need to worry about it, but I'm just
Yeah.
worried about if we get into a real volatile situation, you may be doing really well, but getting some red lines if you
Mhm.
stay at 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
And well, and the other thing is that, we are self-insured, and so we have a fund balance that funds our health insurance plan, and maybe that fund balance might be another thing you might track. I don't know if that's
Or adjust these without using balance, what they would have been.
whether we're maintaining healthy balances, and if so, if they're able to offset some of the cost of the
Yeah.
increase. I think that's what we've done in the past.
Because if you're using the balance to keep your costs down, your claims could be really high, and that really isn't a good performance indicator isn't taking money out of the bank to, that's.
Offset.
Well,
Yeah, you know what I mean?
except it could be because we've been so well
And these costs that
managed.
are listed on here aren't our offsets with any fund balances. These are actually our changes in what we've gotten from the actuaries and the changes. Yep, so they're not the offsets.
Okay, because there was one year where we thought the balance actually got too high in
We made
the
it zero
account, and
one
so
year. Wasn't it zero one year?
we just chose to use some of that to offset.
We had
the
about,
im-
I think it was
increase
4 or 5 years where we did not increase health insurance.
costs,
And
right?
if
Yeah,
there were
you guys remember
small
that.
offsets,
Satisfaction is still going down with us, but don't forget that. 5 years and no premium
I
increase.
think you'll remind them.
I will. We'll send an email. I'll take a letter, Linda. Okay.
Countywide email.
Did you want to say something, Linda?
Well, I just didn't know if everybody heard that this is the actual cost of health care. This is not what the employees pay.
Yeah, we got that. Yes.
Nor what
Nor
the
what we're using
departments
for
are
the
charged.
funds.
This is the actual cost of health
Mhm.
care.
Yeah,
That's good.
We recognize that.
Okay.
And that's why,
Of our
like you said
claims.
at the beginning, we had a number of folks who had,
Mhm.
well, cancer, right? And we had probably half a dozen people in the county that had that pretty significant and costly health issues a few years ago, and so those have kind of worked themselves out. It doesn't take very many people like that to have a big impact on the increase. So, okay, any other questions? No? Good work. We're almost done.
You don't want
The
to be
last department.
You don't want to be last in these things. 'cause
Oh, here we go.
we get
I got
silly.
stood in for this.
Stood in.
Mark Olson, Infrastructure Director for Information Technology. Our 3 points are cybersecurity rating, hours of business downtime, and unique visits to larimer.org. Cybersecurity rating, we've dropped a little down to 770. Local government standards, 550 to 770. This is kind of like this is a credit rating, just like your credit score. They just look at all the factors like your services that are available out there, and they give you just a general security score, which is like your credit score, and just shows you where you are, what your exposure is. We did find our 770 score, our drop down there of 30 points was we found some public-facing addresses that were out there that we're cleaning up right now. And it came across on a report. So hours of business.
Those are unused email addresses that are accessible by the public.
Yep.
That are not being used and monitored, so they might have been a vendor who we gave an email address to do a project with us, but we didn't eliminate that.
Neil Gluckman.
Could be,
IP addresses. Larimer.org. We're fortunate that our only real exposure to the internet is through Larimer.org, so we really work on controlling the security on that. A lot of other cities and stuff might have, like the library district has a website, the city has a website, the utilities has a website, so it's really hard from a central management perspective to control that, whereas our exposure is Larimer.org, and so that makes it much easier to manage.
Who comes up with the standard?
The standard is by a company called BitSite, and they keep track of this across the country. And we can have them research vendors if we're looking at doing business with a vendor. They have a security credit score for a vendor that we're looking at doing business, so we do have them do some inquiries for vendors that we're looking at engaging with as well.
But they give us the number?
Yep, yep, totally independent.
Okay.
Hours of business downtime due to infrastructure failures. This year so far, we had an hour outage at Bison Center. So it's even less than 1 hour. It was 20 minutes. That's been our only outage in 2019 year to date that was unplanned. So I know, don't do that. We rate it as unplanned. We do planned outages every Thursday from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Friday morning for software updates and network updates and stuff like that. So this is totally unplanned. And then Hermit Park got hit by lightning last night, so that's another one. This is just our infrastructure. We just track our infrastructure. We don't track the connections to the state because we're not always aware when those state links go down or non-operational to any of the state systems.
How big does a failure have to be in order for you guys to count it? I mean, is it one computer, a whole?
We count this on the infrastructure level. So we look at the infrastructure like a network outage, like a campus is offline or a building's offline. We don't look at individual PCs at that level. We look at network infrastructure or servers, just a little bit broader. And then unique visits to Larimer.org. You can see we had a spike up of about 400,000 this year. When we initially did this, we thought since we combined Bulletin Board and Larimer.org into one portal, and then you logged on if you were an employee, that was what the increase was, but it wasn't. We took those out and did apples to apples comparison, so our spike of a 400,000 is actually reflected there.
Why is that occurring, do you think?
New website went live during the year, and we possibly, with the assessors, we had a lot of traffic on assessors. We have they're one of our number one hits, as well as the sheriff's office. Those are our top hit web pages. That's just my guess, unless you have any other.
No, we combined when we launched the new site. We brought the sheriff's department online under Larimer.org. A lot of things lead people to the website now, so that's where we.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're able to determine how many visits for the different sites.
Yeah, for every single page, we can determine how many people visit every single page.
What about the commissioner's page, huh?
Yeah. About 6 months, it's gone in the tubes.
I've been on it twice.
No, but I can tell you, and I don't know if this means anything or not, but like I follow very few people on like, what's the picture one? Instagram? Instagram? No, I don't do Snapchat. Instagram. Don't say I do that. Instagram. I just follow my kids and Lynette Johnson and Larimer County, and so like for instance, there was a graphic on there this weekend about the community report, and it was leading you right into the county website to look at if you wanted to view the community report. And so I think we've done a lot of cool stuff with social media too. That's probably pushing traffic to the website. And frankly, everybody talks about how awesome this website is. I mean, I'm hearing it everywhere. How good the new. I know Greg did a great job. How that website is like so far above like any other local government website. I think a lot of people are just checking it out to see what all the buzz is about. I don't know, but it's like getting high praise. I'm hearing from people on the street, which is a weird thing to hear about, right?
It won an award.
I know it won an award. You win at least one award, right?
Several awards.
Yeah, it should have the number of awards.
Award last year, and then we won one recently this year as well.
Like Fort Collins.
The goal is to win 2 a year.
I know.
And the other thing now, redirecting all the
that should be our goal. That should be our performance measure. How many?
All the county employees now can get access to any internal bulletin board stuff from their homes now, which is a change that we did in 2018. It's easy for employees to engage.
Show you.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. You can even do it on your phone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I never used to be able to do that.
Okay. Any questions?
Still don't, 'cause I
Mark?
know how, but-
Good work.
Good work.
Is that everything?
Thank you.
That's all we have. Public safety will be next December 9th. and thank you for the department heads and county leadership for the investment of time into this. It's not a top priority. There's always so many things going on, but because you've made it a priority, we're able to do this, and I think it's a big benefit to the county and the public.
Well, it's a benefit for us to see how we're doing, and obviously, yes, I'm going to. It's a huge benefit for us to find out how the county's doing. It's a tool that we can utilize in our budgeting process if we need to. It's a great tool to evaluate the county manager, frankly, and if is the organization running as efficiently and effectively as we hope it is. And it's an outwardly facing. I'm talking about the community report. It's a great resource for us to use to tell our story to the public. What are people getting? We hear that they're paying increased property taxes. What are they getting for that money? And so I think this is part of how we tell the story of the good work that the county does, and the fact that we do it, we think, better than almost any other local government. And so, Matt, thanks a lot. You've done yeoman's work on this. I know it's been a lot of work for you, in addition to your regular duties. And you're meeting every day with different departments, figuring out the budgets for 2020, and this is extra stuff, like you said. And so, good work. We really appreciate it. Thanks, Linda. And thanks, everybody, for coming out today. Is there any other business to come before the board this morning, Linda?
None today,
Then the board will
Commissioner.
stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.